Vajrasattva Samaya, Manipulaya, Vajrasattva, Namaste, Rita Mabhawa, Sapuja Mabhawa, Sapuja Mabhawa, Nalanta Mabhawa, Sawasana Prayacha, Sarakana Sichame, Chiram Shriya Purvam, Ha 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 Ho, Bhagavan Sarvajatagata, Vajramame Munja, Vajrabala Mahasamaya Sattva, Ahunte. You sure you want to read this again?
Actually, this wasn't it. It was something in imparting. I'd like to encourage you to pull up an article from Psychology Today. It's by Dr. Robert Lanza, Lanza, and the title of the article is "Dreams Are More Real Than Anyone Thought," and its dreams are more real than anyone thought. And the subtitle is "Waking Reality and Dreams Are Different Versions of the Same Thing."
What's the date of the article? All you have to do is Google that title, and it's the first one that comes up. I don't need it, she said.
Yeah. So it's 3 years old. I sure would like to see where they are right now in this conversation. Dreams are more real than anyone thought. That's if you just Google that. And I'm so pleasantly surprised. I'm gonna try to get through today's Dharma talk. Jim started this with a question that he sent me. I'm going to do my best to explain this, but it might not be that I might not be able to. He had a question about meditation and entering the jhanas. And he said, I was having some good success when I was working with jhana instructions according to well, I wasn't going to say it online. But yeah, him. And you have to remember that whenever a teacher is teaching, they may not be teaching the truth as absolutely as they know it, because they have to pay attention to who their audience is. And so the teaching has to be in line for the way Buddha Master says is that for it to be truth, it has to be in line with the capacity of the hearer. We always think that absolute truth is this, and everything else is somewhere in between. But he says you have to consider the fact of the participants in the process. That's what really gives it its meaning and gives it its definition and its ability to be embodied. And so if there's a disconnect there, then you could really say that truth has not gone forth because it was not able to be captured or taken up by the hearer. And so this can help us in our everyday life and how we're handling things in life and talking with people in life. We get a definition of what is truth versus what is not truth, and we get it on a rudimentary level. But there's so many different aspects to that and how to apply it in life that unless we are sensitive to this aspect of it also being what is apprehendable by the listener, then we will misunderstand and misuse what we think of as truth. That starts to throw a spanner in the works of everything then, you know. I mean, you could be totally confused because we can so concretely define something that is true versus something that is not true. Or in the times past, we have been able, we have concretely defined that. As a matter of fact, we do it all throughout the day in our life. And like, this is true, this is not. This is true, this is not. This is real, this is not. And this whole notion of seeing life as a dream, as a bubble, as a shadow, is to try to shake us out of that concretized mode, because it brings us into a fundamental falseness that we can't recognize, because it ties us into the five aggregates. And it's through the lens of the five aggregates that we make these assertions. And he's trying to take us someplace beyond the five aggregates if we want to go. And that can be a little disorienting for us. That's why it takes a lot of pondering and a lot less, well, I think. He's trying to shake us out of that, the rigidity of thinking that's based on information that we have settled upon as the result of our five aggregates, as a result of the information filtering in through our six sense basis. Because that's where, it's not to say that there is no value to that, but it's only like the difference in how far a football can be thrown. I might only be able to throw it 15 feet, but there's another who could throw it 75 feet. So I do see something, but I only see 15 feet worth, you know. And so that means that there is more that can be known beyond where our limit is. And if we don't stop, if we don't cap our understanding at our own individual limit, then there is no limit to how far we can go and how vast our understanding can be, how much of a capacity we have in every moment to influence what is unfolding in the moment. We're limited only by our own internal capacity. And so so he had a question about, well, I was making some progress when I was following Ajahn Chah's method. And that is a method. He's a very good teacher, very dear friend of mine. But that method is designed for particular minds. And maybe our minds were at that place at the time where that method could actually help us, awaken more to prajna. But it's like giving meat to a baby, it would choke them, but giving milk to a grown man continually, will malnourish him. There's something different that's needed. So we shouldn't hold so tightly to any method, any one method, unless we're not changing, unless we're not growing. Then I have I have one CD, just one CD from Buddha Master, um, because sometime in the past he collected all of them back because people were translating the teachings in their own way, and so he took all of them back. But I need somebody to tell me what din 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 means, because uh, I hear him saying it, to me from time to time. He might be saying, stick closer to the teachings. I don't know, but he's saying din 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 din. Um, I'm gonna find out by next week. I'll call, what's the name? Ask her what that means. Mhm. Okay, so I deeply apologize. I'm a little bit suspended right now. Uh, so he was teaching people who have undergone a training of mindfulness practice that's separate and really separate and apart from the Dharma. Whenever you encounter mindfulness in the suttas, it's always connected to something. Mindful of what? It's always connected. Mindfulness never stands alone. It's and so this practice of mindfulness that has sort of had a kind of standalone connotation has to be reinterpreted and reintegrated into the whole Dharma. And so he was saying, let me help you get to a place that you can settle just a little bit. And he gave a method to uh, those students to help them to settle down. Now, part of that method included certain things like certain certain signs, um, bringing the mind to stillness, staring. Remember, I used to even do it myself because it's very easy to take you to that level. Don't know how much further you can get, but you can get to some level if you're just peering into the vastness of the emptiness behind the closed eyelids. And that alone will provide a kind of concentration that begins to work with the mind in such a way that you have visual manifestations. And that is a level of concentration. And it can take you out of the gate fast, but it just can't go the long haul. And so then there comes a time when you need to add something to that, and another instruction is given. And when that instruction is given, then that method will no longer work as effectively for you because you've outrun the method. Are you with me? Okay, so you've outrun the method. And now there needs to be a new emphasis so that you can chart the next distance across the next bit of ground. And then later on, there will be another one and another one. That's why there are innumerable methods, because there are innumerable minds, and the one mind can go to numerable places, numerable expansions, different awarenesses, different understandings. So what you need at one time is not what you need at another time. But our fallback is, I know that works because I did that. I know that that's uh, that is a true way that has given me some uh, some boost, some lift in consciousness, some kind of transmission, some kind of movement into another another reality or aspect of reality. So I know that that is true, and I know that's real. And what I'm saying to you is that that is true and it's not true. So it's two sides of one coin. And if you want to go further, you have to go further. If you want to go further, you have to go further. You can't stay where you are and want to go further. You know, I mean, it calls for something. First of all, it calls for a decision. It calls for a willingness. It calls for throwing oneself all in to be able to pivot, to redirect, to uh, to take up the inquisitiveness, the it takes that, and I'm not just talking about it. It takes actually stepping there. Sometimes people will tell me something like, "I'm ready now. I'm all in," you know, and then a month later they're telling me the same thing that they told me a month ago before they said they were ready and they were all in. And they're still right in the same place, no more all in than they were before. They may be ready. I know they're ready, but they are not all in. And so even though one can look over in the distance, you can't get to that spot in the distance unless you go there. And so this is where our work starts to come in. Like we have to go to the places that uh, we say we want to be in. That's the only way you get there. So when Buddha Master starts teaching about an aspect of cultivation that involves concentration or that involves meditation, he's not talking about thinking about meditation. He's talking about you have to traverse the territory that takes you there. And so he talks about a bridge, building a bridge, and he calls it the shifting the mind practice. Is a bridge that takes us from our ideal thinking and our yearning or desiring or wanting to be in a certain state. It takes us, and there's this chasm, but he shows us how to construct a bridge that ties the two together. So that one really enters into meditation. So we think in one way of meditation as a practice towards something, but later we understand meditation as a state, and we have had to traverse some territory to enter into that state. I hope you're with me. And so we start to think of meditation in a different way. We are now exchanging a temporary or preliminary method for the real thing, and that so entering into jhana is entering jhanas are entering into certain states. And how we get into them is that we have to actually cross the bridge, walk over the territory, and actually enter into them. And so one who comes to sit in meditation who's not stable, who needs an escape from, to get away from the the cacophony of voices in their head, to get away from all of their thoughts, to get away from all of their confusion or all of their pain. Yes, come in. That's one state, and an explanation of meditation for that is something to quiet the mind. But it's not talking about entering into states. At that stage, it's talking about quieting the mind. And so some preliminary practices are given to help you quiet the mind, but that's not truly entering into the states that go beyond the sixth, seventh, and eighth consciousnesses. Okay, so that's a preliminary place. And to go further, you have to go further. Okay, all right. And so he's talking about the shifting the mind practice. And I want to read what it has to say about it. And I'll figure out how to tie in the psychology article on dreams are more real than anyone thought. And actually, I don't even have to go into that because this was written in 2021, and and science is just catching up. That's why I love science, but I don't love science more than the Buddha Dharma because it's catching up. Yeah. I'm picking up from the end of something else. Mhm. Okay, I think I'll start right here. Uh, no. We must go from small to large, from those close to us to those distant from us, fostering a very magnificent, noble, and unselfish state. The fruit that is free of self can only be established on the state of unselfishness. If one cannot even sever selfishness, one is all the more incapable of severing attachment to self. To enable you disciples to progress and truly realize Prajna, I have constantly and patiently spoken of topics that are practical. That's why I explain methods of continual practice that must be explained. All such explanations are for you to achieve Prajna. Without the five aggregates, there would be no samsara of living beings. If there were no five aggregates, there would be no existence of myriad phenomena of the world. Living beings would not exist. The cycle of reincarnation would not exist. However, whether they are phenomena of the five aggregates or material phenomena, they all manifest in correspondence with one's own karma of causality, stemming from the aggregate of action. The reflection of myriad phenomena into the actual state of the aggregate of action, the making or creating of karma, that is, the effect of myriad actions, eventually manifests as reality. Anyone can become accomplished as long as a person truly cultivates oneself. When one's practice reaches a certain level, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas will naturally open up one's prajna wisdom, and then one will reap the fruits one deserves. I do not belong to esoteric Buddhism nor exoteric Buddhism. I belong to pure Buddhism, the Buddha Dharma of all the Buddhas without any sectarian differentiation. Those of you who learn esoteric Buddhism should not regard Guru Padmasambhava as the only patriarch, forgetting even about Shakyamuni Buddha. You should understand that in this world, all teachings of Buddhism originate from and were transmitted by Shakyamuni Buddha. There is no Tibetan Buddhism. Rather, what happened is after the Buddha's teaching spread to Tibet, Tibetans combined the local Bon religion into a form of Buddhism. And the main body of Buddhism is the teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha. The term Tibetan Buddhism is incorrect. We should not forget about the origin. It is all Buddhism and Buddha Dharma transmitted by the Buddha. It is only after Shakyamuni Buddha that our yidams and our patriarchs have their rank. So then he goes into something else that I'm going to skip over, and I want to get to the part about the shifting the mind consciousness. And the reason why he gave that introduction is because everyone he was speaking to came from somewhere, from some practice, from some other teaching. And so bringing all of that together with you, then as he started to teach, what's popping up in everybody's mind is what they've already learned, some method from some lineage, from some, and that's what starts to make the mind vector off to review and view everything through the lens of that previous or prior tradition. And so it makes it very difficult to keep going because one is evaluating and lining it up with what they've already learned. And so that's what he was trying. And he starts to talk about humility and having the humility to be open to listen and not think that we know everything already. Otherwise, why come? Don't come, but being open to hear something that can from its own side, that one can then evaluate something that they have, or way they have understood, or the way they have learned something, or the way, even if that was a method that worked for them, that the reward of that, the merit of that, the is that now you get opened to something else. And so, and our tendency is to review that or view that through the lens of what we already know, rather than allowing this to inform what we already know. And so it hinders our ability to grow and develop, or what he calls the quick path. And so he says that you've learned meditation in certain ways. He said, but now I want to give it to you in another way. And don't try to compare it to the previous way. Just try to enter into it in the way that it's given. Things seen in a dream seem real, or they are real to the dreamer. Upon waking up, you think, I was dreaming. After one wakes up, the situation becomes false. At this very moment, you are also in a dream. Disciples, you are in a dream as you sit here before me. You're in a long dream because time differentiations give rise to time concepts, and because the occurrence of events give rise to time concepts. Actually, This time is the same time as the time in a dream. When will you know that you're now dreaming? After you understand your original nature, after you turn the light to illuminate inwardly and thoroughly illuminate prajna, you will know that you are in a dream now. Only when you know this is a dream will you thoroughly illuminate the five aggregates or see the five aggregates as being empty. Only then will you resolve to truly cultivate yourself. Only then will you abide by precepts. Only then will you not make all kinds of mistakes. Only then will you selflessly contribute everything you can. Only then will you eventually eradicate attachments to dharmas, to things, and enter emptiness in the ultimate sense. Now, when else will you know it's a dream? There is another method. Reflect upon something now. Suppose you are about to die or are already seriously ill. Would you say that it is a dream or not? Contemplate this. Shift your mind consciousness to the time of your death to contemplate from that perspective. If we differentiate in terms of time, dreams are small dreams, while human life is a big dream. The dreams we dream while asleep are small dreams. Being here right now is a big dream. There is no difference between the two types of dreams. Both arise from the thinking of the mind consciousness. If people realized intrinsic reality prajna, they would immediately understand what Shakyamuni Buddha said in the Diamond Sutra. Human life is like a dream, illusion, bubble, shadow. It's just like a dream. It passes after a short while. Everything is a false appearance, like what appears on a TV or movie screen. All are false appearances. Human life is like a thunderbolt in the sky. Right after it flashes, it is gone. After listening to my discourse here, you should turn the light inward and reflect, asking yourself whether what I'm saying is factual. The words illuminated the five aggregates, saw that they are all empty, refer to contemplative illumination, prajna. If one illuminates and sees reality, and sees the reality of no self and no dharmas, then one realizes the emptiness of the four aggregates of feeling, conceptualization, action, and consciousness. And when one harbors no characteristic of self, one realizes the emptiness of form. Only when one harbors no characteristic of self can one realize the emptiness of the aggregate of form. And from the internal body and mind to the external world, there becomes no distinction between internal and external. All dharmas are empty. The internal body and mind and the external world are internally empty and externally empty states that I have referred to. Emptiness has four key meanings and is of 18 kinds. And then he goes into the 18 kinds of emptiness. But the one that I want to refer to today is the emptiness of the mind. Listen carefully. The emptiness of mind is particularly important. The emptiness of mind is the principle of the true thusness of Dharma nature. Explaining the emptiness of mind is actually explaining the principle of Dharma nature or true thusness. The emptiness of mind is the principle of emptiness illuminated by prajna wisdom. The principle of emptiness with perfect interfusion of state and wisdom. What is that? When Buddhas, bodhisattvas, or you disciples realize that there are no characteristics of anything, the mind is unimpeded, knowing that all dharmas are empty. Why should one realize that there are no characteristics of personhood or self? This is a question that tends to baffle you. That is, when we do not even have thoughts, how could we still have any notion of characteristics of personhood or self? In a nutshell, that's the way it is. One is free of any thoughts, yet does not fall into muddledness or drowsiness. However, one is also not attached to this body of brightness and this wonderful bliss. In this state of non attachment, the mind nature does not have a point upon which to light. Naturally, there is then nothing that one can be attached to. At this time, any notion of characteristics of personhood or self simply does not exist. And this means that one's cultivated powers have reached a certain level and one abides in an imperturbable state of samadhi. That is the concept. So this emptiness of dharmas, of things, of thoughts, of conceptualizations is a state of realization. And he says that we actually get there through thinking. And that's why we have to have a shifting of the mind practice before we can actually enter into any type of meditative state. Throughout history, whenever a patriarch delved into the ultimate truth of Buddha Dharma, they always talk about meditation practice. They almost always emphasized the need to practice meditation, the need to practice stillness, insight, and the need to enter samadhi. They talked about the threefold practice of precept, abidance, concentration, and wisdom, in which precept abidance gives rise to concentration, concentration gives rise to wisdom. Concentration is about attaining the state of meditative absorption, entering a state whereby transcending the intrinsic control of our own thoughts, we go into another dimension. That's when we can thoroughly awaken to the truth of enlightenment. And that's why they always tend to practice meditation. But in fact, this kind of practice is incomplete. Meditation practice is precisely a premise known as a causative premise that will not enable people to obtain liberation. Why? If the first thing that you did was to practice meditation, wanting to let go of everything, and that's what we think of meditation, like letting go, emptying the mind, letting go of everything. If the first thing that you did was wanting to let go of everything, you wouldn't be able to let go of anything. It's not possible. That's why this kind of Buddha Dharma is incomplete. In the entire world, it can be said that basically all major Buddhist sects know only about meditation practice, but they don't know about the shifting the mind consciousness practice. So we know about what? Meditation practice, but we don't know about shifting the mind consciousness practice. So you have to pay close attention because he's going to be talking about shifting the mind. And our mind shouldn't wander to meditation, the kinds of meditation we know and we've done. Our mind should be gathering around, finding out about shifting the mind consciousness practice. And this is why I have some difficulty with, like doing a general reading and everybody having a discussion, because then we end up going all over the place. Wherever anybody's mind goes, who has a comment, that's where we go. Where any teaching anybody else has had and they want to bring that one up, that's where we go. And we lose the essence of the talk because we have not stayed with it, but we all around Robin Hood's barn, wherever anybody's mind is. So I'm going to say that we changed to Wednesday and Sunday to give me time to work on some other things. But if I also have to come on Tuesday and Friday to just keep the conversations settled, then we might as well go back to Monday, whatever it was, Monday, Wednesday, and Sunday, if I have to be there every time to corral bring the conversation back in. So I would like to not, so that you all could have more time to talk in an informal setting. But if you let the settings get monopolized by people who want to talk about stuff that they have done in the past or how they see it and hold it, instead of focusing and concentrating around the subject matter, then it's a waste of time. So I think I'm pretty clear on what I'm expressing. I don't want you to waste your time, and I don't want you to waste other people's time, just because one feels like they have a need to say so much. If it's not germane, a pondering, a musing, a questioning, or an agreement around the topic that's read, then I'm going to ask whoever's facilitating to ask them, can you hold that thought? Why is it called shifting the mind consciousness practice? All meditation practice must be established upon the foundation of the shifting the mind consciousness practice. Simply speaking, that means if you do not put your consciousness in motion and do not shift your mind consciousness, you will be unable to enter meditation practice. You must first put your mind consciousness in motion to decide how to visualize, which Dharma rule to apply when practicing, how to visualize in the moment when your mind consciousness is put into motion. Putting your mind consciousness into motion is called shifting the mind. It's just simply putting your mind consciousness into motion. So that means that when you sit, you're not sitting there like just trying to throw out and empty out all thoughts, or even focusing on the breath even, that becomes easy. Tell everybody focus on the breath, but it's not just that, it's the mind consciousness being put into motion and directed towards something in particular. That's why when it talks about entering into jhanas, it says with applied and sustained thought, one enters into and abides. So in the beginning, it was like clear your mind. Let's just let go and rest a while. But when you get to another stage of practice, you are activating your consciousness and consciously directing it in a certain way. There's not hardly anything else we do in life except meditation practices that we don't put any thought into it, that we don't bring any effort to it, that we don't, gather and harness our attention and bring bring all our efforts together at it. But with meditation, we've gotten this notion of just let go for a while, And so because of that, without there not being any direction, we're stymied. We're stuck. So first, to let go of the consciousness, we have to know where it is. If I wanted to untie a knot in my shoe, but I don't know where the shoe is, then it's going to be impossible for me to untie the knot. So first, I have to know where the consciousness is. So he tells us, put your mind consciousness into motion and become consciously aware, number one, of the method that you will apply, and then enter that accordingly. If you're told simply to enter meditation practice by letting go of all your thoughts, how are you going to do that? What are you going to let go of? Where do you let them go? It is simply impossible to just let go. If you do not put the shifting the mind consciousness into practice, there's no basis for practicing. There's no basis for the meditation. Regarding how to shift your mind consciousness, I will explain it a little bit more clearly. You may say your practice is chanting, to chant the name of the Buddha. The practice of chanting the name of the Buddha requires putting the mind consciousness in motion in the first place. You need to put your mind consciousness in motion to visualize Amitabha Buddha and to observe the sound of the chanting the name of the Buddha. It is your mind consciousness that needs to be put into motion first. Without your mind consciousness, how can you start to do anything? Without your mind consciousness, you're not mindful of differentiations. Who is Buddha? Who is Buddha Amitabha? Who is Shakyamuni Buddha? Who is Medicine Buddha? You will have no idea at all. Do you understand? You must first apply your mind consciousness, and only then will you know, I am chanting the name of Buddha Amitabha. I am not chanting the name of Bodhisattva Kshitigarbha. Isn't that right? This is called differentiating. That is why meditation practice must be established upon putting the mind consciousness into motion first, shifting the mind consciousness, and then starting a differentiation. This is the ultimate truth imparted by Shakyamuni Buddha, and this is how profound Buddha Dhamma is. Without this process, all meditation practices would be empty talk. That means the practitioner does not understand Buddha Dhamma. Regardless of how substantial a patriarch's level is, or how famous they might be, they are still inept and not adept. Practicing Buddha Dhamma must be established upon shifting the mind consciousness practice first. And even though it doesn't take much time, as a matter of fact, it can be done in an instant, there still must be such a process. It can be likened to using a computer, to making a phone call, and so forth. Now, I like this part because we think entering into meditation is so difficult, but we don't think making a phone call is. We don't think, like using a computer is, because we understand how to do those things. Even though it doesn't take much time to press the keys, if you don't press the keys on the computer, what will happen? Nothing will happen. Do you understand? That's why I tell future generations, if you want to learn and practice Buddha Dhamma, you must do so upon the basis of shifting the mind consciousness, consciously shifting the mind. In very broad terms today, because I don't want to take up too much of your time. So we've been told by Shakyamuni Buddha, by the patriarchs of all, and also by Buddha Master, that one of the greatest things that we can reflect upon is, what is it? Nope. 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 No. When they were talking about meditation practices, what did say the best meditation practice is? Contemplation of
Original.
no, no. What is the one thing that's common to all of us? We don't want to what? Die.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that again. And he says there's two times that you can contemplate it. Now or
What is that?
when you're dying. That's right. When you're dying, it might be too late. But the contemplation of death now, and that's why the highest practices deal with the contemplation of death. Now, for a bodhisattva, after one contemplates one's own death and what pitiful state it's in. And people can say, oh, well, I don't think of death that way, you know. Um, oh, that is what we say a lot of times. But when you really, really contemplate it, you come, you get a bigger sense of what it is. That's when we like thinking on the surface. But he gives a specific contemplation of death, about that last breath, uh, and what happens after that last breath, because there is something after it. But you're not going to be able to make contact with this world, with the ones that's looking at the body that you just got out of. You're talking about a state of loneliness. I don't care who's alone right now. There's no loneliness like the loneliness of death. You can't take your girlfriend, your wife, with you, your dog, or your child. And so he, so these, one is looking at the body and seeing the eroding and the decaying of the body. And that's one thing. But when one starts to think about what they call life, what they call a self, what they call a being, a person, that's me. I'm already aware that I'm not my body. You know, I'm already aware of that. I know that there is this body, and like I'm real attached to it. I mean, in a real sense. But the thought of that body dropping off and I'm bodiless in the vastness of emptiness, without an identity, without a touchdown space, that can be frightening if you really, 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 really reflecting on it until you see it, because there is a truth in it. Just thinking about dying is one thing, but when one is really, really focusing on what that moment is like, it can be terrifying. It can be terrifying to you. And so he says that we have to think in this way, all in, throwing all of our effort and all of our energy into, it doesn't have to be on death, but whatever it's on, let it be on that. Don't let your body be here and your mind's across town, where you going this afternoon. It's like bringing everything together, and with an applied thought and a sustained thought, one can enter into it's one is free, becomes free of thoughts, yet you don't fall into a muddleness or drowsiness. And some people, when they sit to meditate, right away they start to nod off, and if that's what happens to you, then you have to apply the antidote to that. Somebody else, as soon as they sit down, they start thinking about thinking, or they start thinking about what they're going to do tomorrow, or they're going to, but they can't just be here. I'm sitting here, they're thinking about bad things that they did that they feel guilty about, or they're, their mind is in 3 or 4 different places. He's talking about first just bringing your mind down to a single thought, bringing your mind down, all your focus, all your concentration, all your energy into one place. And one decides. Who decides? The Buddha decides. Buddha decides? No, you decide what you're going to focus on in that meditation. And what you'll find is that the more you begin to focus, the more compact your attention becomes, and until it shrinks down into like a dot, and then poof, it's gone. It's smaller than what you can even see, smaller than what you can even grasp. And that's when the last thought has fallen away. And if you've done it well, the next thought. Doesn't. And so that is the state that one enters into. So when the Buddha says, think of meditation as like the wind or the air or the water or the earth or the fire, it says that you can do anything. You can throw garbage in the wind, you could spit in the air, but it's not offended and it's not humiliated. So every thought we have deals with some kind of offense that we feel from the world. And I could say not just an offense, it can also be an elation, but it's rare that we sit down and meditate that we have to still ourselves because we're so elated. Those are not really the kind of thoughts that come to us. It's like everything that's wrong that irritates us, or that has upset us is kind of what comes. But I could say too that happiness over worldly pleasure is still an affliction, But most of the people who sit down and meditate, they're meditating because they need an uptake from the sorrows or the disgust or the aggravation or whatever. And so the first thing you have to do is direct the mind, direct that thinking mind. And then as you direct that thinking mind, you have to have something to direct it upon. And that's where learning the Dharma comes in, because you bring up some Dharma view that you hold. And as you're holding that Dharma view and concentrating it, then everything that's illusory or temporary or has a false appearance or has no original substance but has arisen due to causes and conditions will begin to crumble and fall away. And that's a different level of practice than finding a bullseye and staring at it until you're in a trance. Do you see what I mean? But you can start with something until you know enough Dharma to enter into the Dharma. So one gives you some respite from the world, but it doesn't necessarily take you into Dharma. But you can get so attached to that which gave you respite from the world that you can just keep going there all the time. I had a respite from the world before I began to learn Dharma. All I had to do is turn my mind towards my idea, my understanding of Jesus, and the comfort would immediately arise. I mean, I can do it right now when I want to. All I have to do is I can start to hum a song, the name, just the mention of your name. Calm comes when I call upon your name, and I'm there. You see? And so that's using my consciousness and turning in a certain place. But what is it that I want now? Do I want Jesus's comfort? Or do I want to be a comforter? If I want to be a comforter, then my mind consciousness has to lock in at a different place. Listen to me. It's not to negate the comfort that is available, but it's like, what are you looking for? When you sit in that moment, what are you looking for? Why are you there? If I need comfort, take comfort. If I want to be a comforter, then I have to take up the mind that produces the capacity to comfort others, to be a comfort. And so we may vacillate and move in different spaces at different times according to our different needs. And we don't have to like stick our chest out and say, I'm a this and I'm a that. We don't have to identify ourselves in those ways. That's what the world does. And we just be trying to get along with everybody. But we don't have to. But we have to take it out of the category that it has been lumped into and bring it into the realm of experience, the realm of reality. So everyone in this room can be meditating at the same time, using a different doorway based on activating our consciousness. There is no such thing as like a group meditation. And so some of those ways that we've come together as we grow and develop, it's not that way. That's when you just corral everybody because they don't know yet. But as we start beginning to know, then we start tending to what we need to attend to. And that's when it starts to shift. And the things that we did, they don't work for us anymore. That's how you know when it's time to move, when it just doesn't work for you anymore. And when I say time to move, I don't mean any kind of external movement. I'm not talking about any kind of name change. I'm not talking about that at all. But I mean internally, how one learns how to pick up a method that takes them further. And then later, they can drop that method off and they'll pick up another method. In the Samul, the Supreme and Unsurpassable Mahamudra of Liberation, there's, 20 that we know of, different methods that we take up. Some of us have taken up one of them, or two of them, or three of them. That involves, mantras, and it involves mudras, and it involves visualizations, and it involves all kinds of things. But not everybody can do all of them. But all of us can start with one of them and then progress individually as we progress. So realizing the emptiness of mind is not enough. You have to also realize the emptiness of everything. And that should be like your constant mantra, is the emptiness of everything. And when the closer we get to this, and it's almost like continually reflecting on it. I don't understand it. I don't understand the emptiness of everything that takes us from being the Four Noble Truths to being, no noble truths, because it started with the truth of suffering, and then you get to the end, there is no suffering, and that's a journey to realization. But I can't constantly stick with the truth of suffering if I want to get to the truth of no suffering. I have to step by step out of that truth of suffering to get to the truth of no suffering. I cannot stay in the truth of suffering and come to the realization of no suffering. It is impossible. So we talk about suffering all the time in the Dharma. All the time we talk about suffering. But when I sit down on my pillow I am embracing the truth of no suffering. So what happened to me before the start of Sangha, I'll just tell you, is that I was just thinking how tired I am coming in and talking about suffering all the time, you know. And I had a flash experience of the truth of no suffering. I said, I want to get to the truth of no suffering. We were working on songs today in rehearsal. And what kept coming up for me was how the songs either pointed to some suffering with the hope that we get out, or they spoke of being out, but in a kind of forlorn sense, you know. And I was saying, for both, the words were okay and they were good, but the energy didn't leave you somewhere free. And how we have to be careful in coming out before we offer something. Otherwise, we'll be leaving people halfway in a pickle, you know, or halfway in their depression, or, you know, but come out and then tell about it. And that gives people the exit. You draw them into the beyond the suffering or the vicissitudes that we are so aware of and we experience. And that's the purpose of the song. Ayeshi and Sukha and the opera. Brenda and I went to the opera a few weeks ago. And I was in hog heaven. You know, it took me back to my college days in the fine arts department. And the place even smelled the same. You know, they always have kind of like this old woody smell. And, you know, and there were the instruments and the orchestra's tuning up. And there's the balcony and you see the set. And it was just like, I was just transported back into someplace. And then they started singing and the voices were so beautiful and the auditorium was so masterfully constructed so that the sound in the room was just perfect and, you know, all of that. And so we're going through the opera and then suddenly me and Kadar turned to each other and we said, but it doesn't go anywhere. You know, the story doesn't have the light of the Dharma in it, you know. And I mean, like, we were just trying to have a good time, you know, around music and song and stuff that we like. But there comes a place in your development, in your cultivation, where you start seeing everything through a certain lens. And you can't help it because that's just the lens. So you can start out having your fun thing that you'll enjoy, but when you open your eyes and look through the lens of the Dharma, everything shifts for you. And so this is how it's going to be. That old seat you sat in, you're not going to be able to sit in it because the Dharma removes the chair. Don't try to sit in it. You're not going to be able to sit in it in the way that you sat in it before. But you'll start seeing through the lens of the Master, seeing through the lens of Jesus, seeing through the lens of the Buddha, seeing through the lens of Buddha Master, and everything will look entirely different. And then what are you going to do? You're either going to retreat, you're going to run back to something that's comfortable, that will only be comfortable for a short while, and then you're going to start over again And you're going to do the same thing over again and run back to your safe space, But this is where the fearlessness comes in to walk this journey. The fearlessness to continually take a step forward into what's unknown to you, but it can be known. And so I want to encourage you today to take up this practice in a different way, not from a knowing something, knowledge kind of way, but from having the courage that whatever comes across your path, first, before we can see it with a non-differentiating mind, we have to have the capacity to differentiate. And in order to rightly apply differentiation, we have to know. And in order to know the Dharma, to have the capacity to actually open up to the Dharma, we have to undertake practices is good. No, precepts and vows. And in order to undertake precepts and vows, we have to okay. But just following this, I'll just give you the answer. You have to want to. Okay. So these are the things that we leave out, the parts that's our responsibility. We have to take responsibility for our own growth and development. And there is a path laid out for us to do it. That's the simple way. We can do it the hard way, we can do it the easy way, we can do it the long way, or we can do it the short way. But it all depends on us. In the final analysis, what am I willing to do? And what equipment do I have to have? The precepts and the vows. And what else do I have to establish the discipline to operate in them, for them to operate in me? And if you take it step by step and keep it confined to that, it doesn't have to get any broader than that. I don't have to go around trying to save people. I don't have to go around trying to do good. I don't have to go around trying to be smart. I don't have to go around trying to know all the Dharma. I don't have to, none of that. None of that. Because if we follow this simple path in this way, we will just discover our own intrinsic nature. And we'll shine like the sun and not even know that we are shining. If there's any thought, am I shining? You know you're not shining like the sun, right? Then it becomes easy, this path that was so hard before. We're trying so hard. We're thinking so deeply, And he says, oh, just relax, Don't think so much. Don't try so hard. Have a little fun with it, But that's the way that comes about. No other way. So it's sort of like being able to run fast and walk slow. We have to be able to do both. And we're constantly finding a balance. And it becomes delightful to find the balance because there's something that speaks from inside of you that will constantly let you know when you're a little too far to the left or a little too far to the right. Stop ignoring that voice. When it tells you a little too far to the left, just move central. It tells you too far to the right, just move central. But because we resist that voice, because we have our agenda, we have our way, we have our view, and we hold to those. But he said, if you try to hold on to those, you will be off center. But if you desire to hold fast to the center, then differentiation will take you to non-differentiation, and you'll see the equality of all things. And that's when you'll start to experience life like a dream, like a bubble, like a shadow, like a mirage. It'll be real, yet not real. And that's when the pain starts to leave, the fear, The only fear we have is the fear of giving up ourselves. That's all. The fear of giving up ourselves. But when we're no longer fearing that, when we see that as our aim and our goal, it dissolves so quickly. Comes back again and then dissolves. And it comes back again. But even when it's there, we know that it is essentially empty. So let's just close on, I don't think we have it, do we? All beings are essentially pure by nature. Pure as in shunyata, pure as in emptiness. Yeah.
We've all done this, right? All beings are essentially pure by nature.
Pure as in emptiness, pure as in shunyata. I too am essentially pure by nature, pure as in emptiness, pure as in shunyata. All beings are essentially pure by nature, pure as in emptiness, pure as in shunyata. I too am pure by nature, pure as in emptiness, pure as in shunyata. All beings are essentially pure by nature, pure as in emptiness, pure as in shunyata. I too am essentially pure by nature, pure as in emptiness, pure as in shunyata. All beings are essentially pure by nature, pure as in emptiness, pure as in shunyata. I too am essentially pure by nature, pure as in emptiness, pure as in shunyata. All beings are essentially pure by nature, pure as in emptiness, pure as in shunyata. I am essentially pure by nature, pure as in pure. So take a thought like that. Take a dharmic thought and enter into it. Shift the mind to it and investigate it. Allow the contemplative illumination to open up its meaning. All roads lead to home. All Dharma will dissolve ordinary appearances. And you'll come to that space where all thoughts will cease. And in that space between the last thought and the next one arising, right there's a reality that will open up to you. It's as easy as that. So if you don't have a practice, just start with that one. But you got to put it into practice for its manifestation to appear before you. The Buddha said that, all that a Buddha does is points you to your Dharmakaya. You can't practice it. He points, and then you can see. And in these stages, the first stage is that a certain kind of joy arises in you, a joy that the world didn't give you, so the world can't take it from you. It says, and there will be joy and bliss, not the bliss of getting something, but the bliss of the ego dissolving, the weight of just life itself in the worldly way just begins to dissolve. And you find yourself in sort of like a weightless territory, and a space where the mind is completely at ease. And the joy that arises is because it's not really dependent upon anything. So it's just sitting here thinking about that when I was gathering the reading today, and it for a second experienced it. And that's where, the happiness that came from. And just transported into a different dimension where where appearances are different. Did not leave this room, but yet everything shifted. So be careful where you let your mind go, okay? Thank you for coming.